Welcome to Purpose First. Business leaders all over the world are using new tools and techniques and systems to drive business, make an impact in their industry and a difference in the world. I believe that when we put purpose first, the right systems and processes naturally follow, so we can scale up safely and easily, and that gives us the headspace to innovate and create meaningful change. I speak to the masters of this craft so you can learn to transform your business and do the work you love. I'm Paul McGilvery and this is Purpose First. So Marianne, welcome to Purpose First. This is really exciting. I'm delighted to have you on.
Oh, it's great to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
And I said just before we hit record, I'm going to try really hard not to go too fanboy, because there are probably, in the whole history of my business, maybe 20, we've been running over 20 years now. There are probably no more than 4 people that have come into our business to advise us that have dramatically changed and improved the way our business runs, and you're definitely one of those people.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for that.
It's brilliant. So I've been wanting to have you on the podcast since I had the idea of having the podcast, and I think I first introduced myself to you at a workshop that we met on, and I already knew who you were and had you on my list of people I wanted to interview for my podcast and for my book, and suddenly found myself talking to you just by accident, because I knew you were a systems lady and I had to find out more about the systems lady.
Yeah, that was so funny. I remember that day very well. That was so funny.
That was awesome. So I'll invite you to tell our listeners and viewers more about you. But first I want to touch on the reason why we've kind of, what's the word? We sped this up. We haven't put this in a month in advance. We were speaking earlier on the week and we're saying, okay, we need to record the podcast now. So we're in, the whole world is in really strange times. And businesses all over the world have found that they either cease trading or are now completely changing their operations and working from home and having to really review everything about not only what they do, but how they do it. Absolutely. And so you've kind of been called to arms in this because this is your thing and this is what you've been teaching people for a long time now. And we have a real synergy because on the software side, that's what I've been doing too.
Oh, definitely.
So would you be happy to just share how you got to where you're at, and what it is you do really?
Yeah. Okay. So really my business, as you've suggested, is really all about systems and structure and helping business owners to have the clarity and then the consistency within their business that gives them freedom of choice. An awful lot of businesses, thanks to the E-Myth, talk about working on their business rather than in it. And what my business does is help them to have those in the same way as yours does, Paul. I do a lot of the create, and then you guys come in and automate the hell out of it to make it really efficient. Awesome. So that's really what we focus on. And the reason that I focus on that is because my background when I was in the corporate world was with McDonald's, who, whether you love them, hate them, enjoy their food or think it's rubbish, the one thing that everybody recognizes is that they are brilliant at systems, and it's systems that have made them so consistent and reliable, and have actually also, and I've been reflecting on this a lot in the last week, have also seen them through an awful lot of crises, and a couple of really big ones like mad cow disease and the Buncefield disaster, which was, I don't know if you remember, was when a huge oil depot exploded, and it was right next to McDonald's main, well, actually they only had one small other one in the country at their main distribution center. So there was a lot of need for a crisis management team, and I was part of that team as one of the senior managers. And it was the thing with McDonald's and crises that I think is helpful now thinking about this is they because they plan and they have such rhythm and routine in their business about looking at where they've been and the lessons that they've learned before planning the next steps and the next 90 days, and they do very rhythmically plan every 90 days. It's given them that opportunity to see certain things coming, and be able to sort of plan their way out of it. So, okay, we can't now suddenly start to be great planners, but we can going forward. We can learn from what we have done wrong over time, and then we can plan for going forward. So planning is one of the main things. But we will all learn, I think, over the coming weeks and months. We'll learn a lot about ourselves, about our teams, about our clients, and we will also, not always in a positive way, we will reap what we have sown, in terms of how much training we have done with our teams, what our communication has been like, whether we have hired to our values, all of these really basic things that are now going to really come to the fore. So if you've, like you Paul, you and Jeannie have got a great team, and you have built that team around your values, and having spent some time with you, I know how strong the values are within the business. And I'm sure now you are reaping the rewards of that really strong, we're all in this together team.
Absolutely.
And I think that because we've now got this time to sit and think, we've never had more time to sit and think. It's really a great time to reflect on what we have done well to date and what we can change to be better going forward, to make ourselves crisis proof going forward. That said, this is a crisis beyond anything that anybody has ever experienced before. I mean, properly worldwide, it's
absolutely
amazing.
I was pondering that this morning. I was thinking there have definitely been way worse crises in most of the countries of the world at some point, but for the entire world to be experiencing such a massive deal. I mean, I know in 1300 or something, Marcus Aurelius had to deal with a similar empire-wide pandemic that lasted 18 years. I mean, that's pretty intense.
Wow, that is pretty intense, yeah.
But that was a long time ago, so in living memory, this is unprecedented.
Yeah, it's funny though, because it's something I've used this word in relation to this crisis a few times. It's wonderful that it's worldwide. Obviously there are some awful things happening, people are dying, etc., but there's something about us all being in this together, something about it being, it's properly, we are all having to stop and think and look at things differently, and reinvent. I keep talking about, well, a lot of people are, I guess, creating the new normal, and planning as if this is forever, because we won't ever be the same again. Because we're going to learn so much that's going to change the way we operate. Particularly within businesses, remote working that people have fought against is the norm now.
Absolutely. I mean, just a week, we'll rewind and talk about my business processes as well, and how you've advised us and how that's turned out. But we've just had a week of remote working now, and we've definitely, even though our company name is remote, we've definitely resisted the idea of remote working, because high in our values is this support, and this fact that we're always working in the same big open plan office means that if anyone's got any trouble, someone else knows about it straight away and can work. And we've always resisted this idea that, well, if we're all working in our houses, then we'll be distracted, or I won't know if someone else needs a hand, and they might be reluctant to disturb me because I don't know what I'm doing. Whereas actually, the whole team are quite happy to call each other if they need a problem, and we've just doubled up on the routines. Let's cover the routines. So you came to us 18 months ago.
Yeah, it must be. Crikey. Yeah.
And we definitely had the idea of the stand-ups, and we had a sense of our customer journey, but there was a sense that we weren't getting the momentum that we wanted. We had these projects, and we were delivering projects, but the projects were taking way longer than we expected every time. And we were lacking a certain cohesiveness in the team. And you came up, spent 3 days with us, and we went through our entire customer journey. We did it in the classic way, brown wallpaper on the boardroom table, and we
My favorite, I love it.
Awesome, awesome. Love post-it notes. You can never have enough post-it notes. And as a result of your recommendations and actually the insights that came up from the discussions that you created, we have a daily huddle where we spend no more than 15 minutes standing up, going through we have a Kanban board of work. So we start from the right-hand side and we do what we call walking the board. So we start with all the things that were just closed. So we can say, brilliant, well done, you've closed that work. Then we have stuff that is finished but needs testing by someone else. So we can make sure that someone else in the room is happy to pick up those tests and do that. We have another column for design review to make so that anything that's been done is checked by Chris, our designer, to make sure that he's happy that it looks right as well as works right. Then we have blocked work, and that's where the huddle is really important, because we can say, hey, Nick, why were you blocked on that? And he can explain, and Dan can say, right, I'll help you with that after the huddle.
Brilliant.
Actually, we move between huddle and stand-up. We call them stand-ups generally.
Yeah.
And then we have in progress and then ready for development. So people know what's coming, and people know every time, what's actually being worked on at the moment. Now that alone creates a heartbeat to the company.
Absolutely.
Even before us all having to move to home working and work in these extraordinary circumstances, that when we enforce that, because at remote, we had tried that a few times before you came, and our heart wasn't in it, because I don't think we really saw the real reason why we should do that. We're in the same room. Why do we need to do that?
Yeah.
But because you were so convincing in your arguments for why we should do it, we were like, let's give it a go. And it's stuck. And I can't imagine ever, even if we don't have remote at some point in the future, I can't ever imagine running a business without that daily stand-up.
Yeah.
And a side benefit, there was, I think, maybe 6 of us when you came to us, and there are 10 of us now in the company. As each new person has joined the team, they're automatically brought into the rhythms of the company. So the company does its own onboarding in many ways. They just join, and the first one, they're looking around, okay, and it's fascinating because it just brought people into the company much more quickly.
Yes.
They just join the rhythm. So that's the daily stand-up. Then we have weekly planning and fortnightly planning. So weekly planning keeps us on top of everything that's going on, and every fortnight we work out what we're going to do for the next fortnight.
Yeah.
But at the end of every fortnight, we also have a retrospective where the whole team gets together to look at how the last 2 weeks have gone. And that's fascinating. That retrospective is really interesting because first of all, I think because we're humans, there was a tendency to make it an opportunity to have a bit of a gripe about something. But when we really pushed the reason why we were doing this retrospective, this is about incremental improvement.
Yes.
So this idea that we don't even, and John, one of our senior developers, was really, really good about that. He runs these retrospectives. He doesn't, we started off by saying, these are the good things that happen, these are the bad things that happen, these are the neutral things that happen. And John has a brilliant way of, he just says, there's no good, there's no bad, there are just things that happened. Let's just record the events with no blame, no judgment, no.
Fantastic. Good man.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, that is brilliant.
And it opens hearts, because people can then say, without pointing a finger or feeling that they might be blamed for something, this didn't go right. And the intention is always set, how can we improve? How can we be better? And this incremental improvement every fortnight brings in a new process or changes a process or adjusts. And once we've agreed this is the process, and this is a key insight, I think. It's not me as a business leader telling my employees how they should do things.
Yeah.
This is us as a team deciding how we should do things together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really crucial point. One of the lessons learned for me from McDonald's was around. There was one particular guy who was the chief exec at the time, and he'd always led the business through really good times. And when there were financial crisis, I think it was, that hit, definitely a crisis, he didn't know what to do, but he felt that he had to have all the answers and that he had to be the one that, so he surrounded himself by people who wouldn't challenge him, but would just, do whatever he said. And he had to be removed in the end because the business was not going where it should. Surrounding yourself with people and then using their skills, like you've just shown with John, that makes all the difference in the world. You recognize it's a great opportunity to recognize that none of us is as good as all of us, which was definitely a phrase that McDonald's used a lot. It's let's get everybody together around a Zoom call and let's see what everybody has to contribute to the business.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's ownership there then.
Absolutely.
There's ownership. It changes.
I love your retrospectives particularly, because again, there's obviously you'll have heard of plan, do, review. Even a lot of the businesses who plan, they're good at talking about what they want to do, then they're good at doing it. They're not so good generally at going, okay, what lessons can we learn from that? What did, like you say, what happened? What do we want to happen next time? They don't take that time to have retrospectives. The fact that you do it every blooming fortnight is fantastic. So good. Must make such a difference to your business.
Well, we actually see ourselves improving every fortnight.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that we're creating more processes for ourselves as we do that, or adjusting. But actually, more rules creates more autonomy, because the more we have this structure that we've all agreed on, and actually not just agreed on, but created ourselves, then anyone within that structure know what work to do next. They know how that work should be done.
Yeah.
And if they don't know how that work should be done, they now know, because it's part of our process, that they work out how to do it, and they detail it in our wiki, our ever-growing wiki. And so when the next person comes to do that job, they've got a list of exactly how to do it. And we keep that's alive, and that's constantly updated, and it has saved our asses on many occasions.
Oh no, absolutely. And it's very enlightened of you to look at things that way, and to see that if we have one right way of doing everything, then it allows for creativity above and beyond. It's like having that basic foundation of systems and structure that then allows the creative people to be creative.
Absolutely.
Not everybody gets that. People see, you must have found this yourselves, that people see process and systems as constricting sort of jacket that you can't. What do you call those jackets when you wrap?
Straight jacket. Yes.
Straight jackets. I couldn't think of the word. Straight jackets. Yeah, constricting straight jacket. But just that basic, having one right way to do everything in your business is. I mean that is the McDonald's way. I must have said this a million times. We never talked about systems in McDonald's. We certainly didn't. I'd never heard of Lean Six Sigma till late on in my McDonald's career. We just, we didn't talk about systems or lean working. It was just the way everything got done. It was just the way. There's only one way to cook French fries. Everybody knows what it is. They do it the same way all around the world.
So wherever you go, whatever part of the world you're in, you order a cheeseburger and French fries and you get exactly the same.
Consistent and reliable. And that, I mean, everybody is searching for consistency, but not always appreciating that all they have to do is create one simple, logical and repeatable way to do everything in their business. It's seen as this sort of huge monster. Oh my God, when am I going to get time to do all that? well, funnily enough, right now
Well,
is the perfect time.
well, Jeannie and I say simple, logical, repeatable a lot, because it's such a beautiful and quick plug. That's the name of your most recent book, and it's a brilliant book, and it really identifies all these things and gives you really a guide on how to put this stuff in place. I just had to look it up to make sure I got it right, because it's been a while since we've actually vocalized this, because it's so internal now. But before you came up to join us, there's a book by Daniel Pink called Drive. I don't know if you've come across it. Yeah. So he says that in a team, up to a certain point, money is the motivator, but beyond that point, the motivations switch. Yeah. And we knew this, we pondered this for a while. And what he says is that there are three motivators that kick in: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And our challenge was, well, how do we enable those things? Yeah. So first of all, what we did, autonomy, that's easy, right? We just let everyone choose what work they do, and we let everyone do it how they want, and free reign. And we thought we were being enlightened business leaders. And you can imagine how well that went.
Yes, I can.
Mastery and purpose, and maybe more complex. Mastery, we had a sense of the idea that it would be that, we have a plural site account and anyone can learn what they want, and we're constantly improving. Purpose, this podcast is called Purpose First for a reason, and I'd like to get to that towards the end of the conversation in more detail. But I think we had a sense of what each of our individual purposes were and what the company purpose is. But weaving these three things together were very difficult. But after our time with you, we found that when we had processes that dictated what work should be done and how the work should be done, then the autonomy comes up in, I can say, write a haiku, and this is the structure of a haiku, but every haiku is different, right? Every type or a Shakespeare, what are they called, sextuplets, or no, that's not the right word.
Don't take me down the Shakespeare route.
You can have a structure for literature, but then every novel is different. And so we create that structure, but then allow the creativity of the developer or the designer or project manager to flourish in that. But without that structure, it's like if I'm making music, if I don't know what genre I'm making, I might just make some Asian folk fusion might work, but generally no, not a good look. And so that was the challenge we had with autonomy, and the processes moved that in. The processes gave us the structure, and anyone could create a process, anyone could suggest a process, anyone could amend the process, and suddenly we all felt autonomous. And actually, when you lose this pyramid hierarchy, a lot of pressure's off me.
Of course.
There's a lot less people asking, how should I do this, or what do you want me to do here?
It's the whole idea of autonomy and ownership. If you think about the number of business owners, you'll have heard, they'll have been talking to you about this as much as to me. It's like, oh my God, why can't people use their initiative? Oh my God, why can't they get this? As I've told them how to do that 3 times in the last 4 months or whatever. As soon as you have that structure and those processes, those systems in place, and that one right way to do everything, it makes everybody can take ownership. So the number of times when I was a restaurant manager for my first couple of years in Max, a number of times I'd see a 16, 17-year-old kid come in, really sort of shy or sullen, that sort of typical teenager, I don't really want to be here. And then you would teach them how to cook French fries and man the French fry station. And you would see them over the course of a week, and I'm no longer than a week. Over the course of a week, you'd see their sort of shoulders rise and their head look up, and they would have their station perfectly clean, and nobody's going to run out of French fries on my shift. It was that they loved the ownership, and it's from there you get young kids being floor managers of £1 million restaurant, that's just the level of ownership that people can take when there is systems and structure.
And how amazing. I can't remember whether it's you said this in your book or whether someone else commented about it, but those same 17-year-old floor managers can't keep their bedroom tidy at home.
Oh no, absolutely. Yes, that is so true. But within that environment, and it is about the environment that you create as well, and not the sort of physical environment, and particularly now it's not the physical environment, it's the environment of learning. So your environment is definitely a learning environment, because every 2 weeks, if not in between that time, you sit down and learn from what you've done and how you've done it. And I think right now businesses need to take advantage of the amazing opportunity that they've got, and the time that they've got to communicate more fully with their teams and get their teams involved. And going back to that, not having to have all the answers. If you think if this crisis that we're going through had happened 10 years ago, we'd be in a very, very different position in terms of communicating with our teams. And actually, maybe it's longer than 10 years ago. I'm not very good on my time frames of when proper technology came in. How long has Zoom been around, and was Skype around?
Time frames are difficult. I think I said Marcus Aurelius was in like 1300, but I think I'm like 1,300 years too late. I'm sure he was around.
Well, I wouldn't have picked you up on that one, Paul. Trust me. But no, that's getting those routines in place that you haven't had in place before. You're way ahead of the game with your daily huddles, and you could even still have, obviously they could still all be standing, I guess, for your stand-ups, but daily huddles now for teams that are newly remote are going to be absolutely essential. You can't over communicate right now, but also just having one time, I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever time suits the individual team, just coming together on Zoom, chatting. You were talking about, was it my previous interview was talking about a cat walking past in front of the screen. I know that in your huddles, various things happen, kids and goodness knows what else.
Absolutely. Yes. Yesterday's stand-up was done to the theme tune of Frozen, because their kids were watching it in the background. Today we had Oliver and Friends, I think it was. We definitely had cats. We've had children of all ages, and it's fine. It's life. It's the juice of life, and
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I do think we are we're going to be able to stop taking work so seriously while still getting serious work done, if that makes sense. That because we definitely need, we've just talked a lot about systems and structure, and we definitely need routine and rhythm, and we need to start thinking about how we can recreate that, or start to create that routine and rhythm within our remote teams now. What can we do beyond the daily huddle? What can we do? How can we ensure that we are getting focused work done between bouts of, Daddy, can you just come and come and play with me in the garden? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's essential, and I think it comes down to, just from my 1 week's experience, on 1 week in, the team decided themselves that they would double up on the daily huddle, so we have 2 a day now.
Brilliant.
And that was because we recognised how important it was to I think you can't over communicate is brilliant. And so immediately, not only did they say, okay, we'll have our 9:30 daily stand up, and we'll have a stand down at 4:45.
Excellent.
But we'll also have an informal one at 3 p.m. for our tea break, and we'll take lunch breaks together as well. And
Perfect.
So we have these channels open because we recognise that how essential it is to keep that communication open. And I think you're right. It's never been more important.
No,
And I feel very grateful for having that in place already.
Oh no, absolutely. It's so great that you've got it in place already. The other thing I was going to say in terms of communication is that sharing the heavy stuff in terms of we're all making decisions about furloughing and protecting the business and actually sharing that with the team to as much as we possibly can, because their livelihoods are ultimately at stake during this period. Letting them know what's going on and not treating them like children.
Yeah. Definitely protecting them from any of this information is not helping.
No.
And I think we've definitely we're being much more open about how many sales meetings we have, how many leads are coming in, so that they can see, how far into the future we're definitely secure.
Yes.
And that vulnerability, I mean, that's another one of the routines that you brought in, actually, that we've doubled up on, which is the monthly one-to-ones.
Yeah.
And so we had them, I don't know, maybe once every 6 months or something before, but monthly. And they, funnily enough, they've been the hardest to implement for various reasons. I think different personalities, the idea of actually just sitting with us and being really open and intimate and vulnerable about your feelings can be challenging for some people.
Yeah.
But from home working, we decided, okay, not once a month, once a week. We need to check in and make sure that everyone's feeling, how is everyone feeling, and letting them know, address their concerns directly and say, yeah, I'm worried too. This is freaky. But as a result of that, I'm putting this in place and this in place and this in place. And I can't be sure it's going to work, but I've got a good feeling about it, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People are our teams are looking to us for leadership, and just for, they don't expect us to not be worried by it, but they do expect us to be putting things in place, and having that weekly. The one-to-ones are so. I mean, it's brilliant that you're doing them once a week now, because they are so important. Because we know this, not everybody speaks up at a meeting, whether it's online or face to face. Not everybody speaks up. And there could be people who are just, worried but hiding it, and they just need that level of, even if it's just, I'm here. When you feel you need to speak, just know that I'm here. People just want to be led. And it's funny you're saying, but you're saying about the systematic one-to-ones. I've been talking to a few, scarily, to a few business owners who've actually, they've just stopped all meetings because they don't fully embrace the technology, and they don't fully understand Zoom. Even they've never had to work on Zoom. One particular manufacturing business will just cancel all meetings. Well, but you can move them. You can just move them online. You don't need to not have that. But from a performance management point of view, being really like your daily huddles, and you sort of stand up and stand down, which I love the names of those. There is an element of performance management just inherent in that. This is what I'm going to achieve over the course of the day. This is what I have achieved, or actually I've had a bit of a problem with that. I need to talk about that tomorrow. Whatever. It's a sort of performance management, but on a and this again is part of reaping what you sow. If you've never actually thought about how you measure individuals' performance, you've just measured them on whether they turned up to work on time, and whether you had to shout at them, how often you had to shout at them over the course of a month, or whatever it might be. If they've just been good employees, just getting on doing their work, and you've never thought about how you measure how good that work is, now is the time to really think about that, because we need to be able to manage people's performance. We need to be able to give them feedback on how well they're doing, or otherwise.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that people have got meaningful work to do.
That's the perfect segue. That's exactly where I was going. Perfect, because I mentioned Daniel Pink. So we've got autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So autonomy was perfectly dealt with by the systems and processes that we put in place, and the mastery is dealt with by the retrospectives, so that we can continually improve. How do we improve that 1% every fortnight? How do we improve? Purpose is the most complex and most personal, but also the most important, I think. And the one-to-ones are a perfect environment for you to actually say, so what do you want to be doing? What is it in you? Why are you doing this? What is your drive? And we can, you know, the quietest people, just as you've said, who won't speak up in a stand-up or even in a retrospective, can, in a trusted environment, talk about their dreams.
Yes.
And when we do that, that's actually when you came to us. Actually, I should say, because I'm talking a lot about our experience at Remote, and it's not so that I can say, hey, aren't we great? We've got our processes in place. It's to say this stuff works. And the reason we're recording this is because I know how many businesses this will help if they start to look at this. That's just my disclaimer there. One of our developers who had just joined us when you came, in fact, I'm going to praise him, so I don't mind naming him out, Dan. You did a really interesting kind of report, and you were very good, because I get this impression that they shared quite a lot of quite personal things, but you kept a Chinese wall there. We didn't hear that stuff.
Yeah.
But you gave us a sense of the mentality of the company and the intention of the company and the general vibe. And with that, you gave us a kind of chart of where you felt everyone in the team was at and where they could be at. And Dan had just started, and you said to me, Dan has the potential to be a superstar in this company. And the only reason he's not is because he's just joined and he's still learning the processes. And in the one-to-ones, Dan was at the start very quiet. We couldn't really get a sense for him. In the one-to-ones, we discovered that actually he's very ambitious and really wanted to be lead developer. And so we started bringing in coaching. We sent him on training. He's now a qualified Scrum Master.
Fantastic.
We invited him to run the daily stand-ups and the backlog grooming and all the kind of planning. And just last month, we officially made him lead developer.
Brilliant.
Which is
that is really good news. Congratulations, Dan. If you're
listening. Dan. And we could have very easily have missed that drive, because he's polite, he's quiet. And actually, he's not so quiet now.
I bet he's not.
He's very supportive, and he'll put everyone's needs before his own always. And so we could have just gone, Dan's a grafter, he gets stuff done, and left it at that. But in the one-to-ones, that information came out that actually he really felt that he had it in him. And he's a fantastic lead developer. He summons everyone. He tells me and Jeannie what to do a lot of the time, and it's great. And,
that is great.
This
This is a great time to unearth superstars. It's part of that. We'll find out about our team. We'll find out who's with us, who's not, and that there will be some teams who struggle in that regard. But definitely I really think that, as I said, people have talked about working on their business, not in it, and how they've got no time to do any of that. This is a perfect time to really start thinking about who you've got on your team, what you want out of them, reinventing your customer journey for the new normal. What is it going to look like, and actually working out step by tiny step what needs to be in place for the new normal, and then creating the process to match it. Do you need a new template for how to gather client information on a call? What are the sort of things that you need that are going to make your customer journey consistent? Creating how-to guides, how-to videos, ideally, anything that's online, get it on a screen recording video, and then train your team in how to use it. Now is the time. It's a brilliant time to get your team up to speed, and the efficiencies that will come from that will be amazing.
Absolutely. I think the customer journey is the last piece of the puzzle here, really, isn't it? Once we've got our internal team with their autonomy, their mastery and their purpose.
Yeah.
And we've got a heartbeat to the company, and we've got a rhythm to the company, and we know how things are done. It's all about refining that experience from first touch with the customer all the way through to that final delivery.
Yes.
and beyond.
Absolutely.
And it's fascinating that's not a one fixed thing. It's
No.
constantly, it's up for improvement too. It's up for mastery too.
Yeah.
So how can if people haven't mapped out their customer journey,
Yeah.
even if they have, actually, I agree, it's time to relook at it
Yes.
now. How can
Yeah.
they begin to do that? Is there a process they can follow?
Well, you talked about the big brown sheet of paper, but actually just a simple sheet of A3, or even there's in fact you shared Lucid Chart with me just last week.
Yes.
And we've also been looking at another online called Miro, MIRO, but actually just PowerPoint, just creating swim lanes on a PowerPoint chart and sitting with your team on a Zoom call and going, okay, what's the first thing that still happens is that the client gets in touch with us. Do they call us? Who's answering the call now? How are they answering the call? Are we all answering the call in the same way? That step by tiny step. I did this last week with a few of the guys on Daniel Priestley's 24 Assets, and just in the first couple of steps, they'd already found 3 things that are not right for the current situation that we're in, that they needed to put right, but also that we're going to change going forward, or that they wanted to change going forward to create their new journey. So it really is step by tiny step. The best way for me is always going to be a sheet of paper and post-it notes.
Yeah.
But to be honest, as I say, simple PowerPoint, just with lines across your sheet, client at the top, all of your roles down the side, your automation at the bottom, and then just new text box for each one, for each point on your journey. And then obviously, as we did with you, and I know you do with your clients, when there is an issue or something that needs to be addressed, just putting that in a different color for now, just right, this is an issue, this is something that we need to change, put it in a different color. And then when you look at your whole journey, you see all of those different issues.
Yeah. And that's
then take an issues and actions sheet, put all of your issues down the side, decide what the action is, and then assign it to one of your team with a deadline for it getting done. So it's not something I would suggest, because it's actually quite difficult to be online for a long time in a team learning sort of environment. It's not the same as being face to face. I mean, face to face it's quite intense. Doing it online, more intense. So break it down into different stages of the customer journey. First contact through to onboarding, onboarding through to stage 1 of whatever your service or product delivery is, and just chunk it down and then piece it all together at the end.
Absolutely. Although I must say that I've done 2 workshops online now in this lockdown. They've been 5-hour-long Zoom sessions.
Wow.
And one of them was over half of it was customer journey. And it was fantastic. We didn't lose
really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good.
And so it is definitely possible. And you make sure you take tea breaks, and you don't just keep driving on because you're connected. And yes, we kind of overlap here, don't we? Because we do this with our clients too. And it's
absolutely
fascinating that we're aiming for the same thing, but at the same time we're aiming for different things. Which is, I love that about the synergy between our work. And so yes, the colored post-it notes for the pains, as we call them, or the bottlenecks, are possibly the most enlightening out of that entire process.
Absolutely.
We generally find that when we're mapping out, especially for a larger company, when we're mapping out an entire journey, all the red post-it notes, they hang around in the same area. And that's perfect from a systems point of view, because we know, okay, MVP, let's fix that. Let's turn this all into green post-it notes. And so we know then what we can systemize, what we can automate, what we can turn into software. Because especially again in a large company, you've got 25 people, you're turning over 6 million, and you know you're running a big logistics operation, for example. You can't just map the whole thing and build the whole thing. It's just, you know, there's a massive culture shift aside from the expense and the size.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the what we often find is that the business owners are actually they make up the colored Post-it notes, you know, because they there are tasks that only they can do, or they have decided that they need to check something 3 times before it goes out, and you know, back to that autonomy. If you've got one right way to do each task, the business owner can have more confidence and trust that it's going to be done right, and that it's going to be done right first time. So there is no need to go back and check. So the business owner tasks, and also the we were talking earlier about that person who's got all of the knowledge in their head, but it's never quite been pulled out of their head into a how-to guide that other people can follow. And anytime when you're working through your customer journey, anytime you spot a task that only one person can do, then you blooming well make sure that you've got a how-to guide, you know, some level of process for coping if they aren't around.
Absolutely. And that's actually empowering for the other members of the team.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah.
I definitely had that with one real red Post-it note for us has been building iOS apps. I don't mean like building them as in developing them, but the actual final, when you've done all the code and you need to build it to give to the App Store.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's a complicated process. I don't know why Apple particularly, sorry Apple, I'm calling you out, but so much of the Apple user experience is beautiful and intuitive, and you don't need the manual. But then that one point where you actually submit an app to the App Store, it's a nightmare and it's horrible. So there were only 2 of us in business that could do it. And so the last time we did a round of developing and building for Android and iOS, we mapped out every single thing with screenshots, with this happens and this happens. And now our most junior developer, actually he does those builds when before it could only be the senior developer.
Fantastic.
That's empowering. He loves iOS.
That is massive. That is massive. Have you got into how-to videos yet?
I've done a few where I've recorded my screen.
Yeah.
Generally, and maybe it's because of the nature of, we use a wiki to do it, so maybe it's the nature of that.
Right.
We prefer generally to have bullet points with checkboxes and the odd screenshot. Yeah. But actually, that same junior developer, he did make a few videos when he was doing his how-tos.
Fantastic.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, to me, it makes sense because it takes as long to create the how-to video as it does to do the task. Yeah. So, you know, once you've pressed screen record, you do the task. There's your how-to video done, which I love about them. And certainly for even for really complicated tasks, if you chunk them down into, you know, this is stage 1 of the task, stage 2 or whatever. Yeah. So they're I as far as possible, I just want people to move away from paper-based how-to guides. I don't want them having files somewhere. There are still some who have actual files.
That's crazy. You spend 2 months making an operations manual and then
nobody follows.
I think in this particular time in these current events as well, I think this aspect of it is much more important, because if one of our team falls ill, for example, I can't be phoning up someone who's in a fever asking them how to build the iOS apps. So actually you're reducing the risk on your own company in doing that. It might feel good that I'm the one that knows how to do this, but if I fall ill, then what's going to happen?
No, it's being the only person who can do something is never a good thing in terms of, well, certainly in terms of scalability, actually. I know at the moment, none of us are really necessarily, well, some people might be thinking about scale. Let's grab the opportunity and go. But at the moment, I think for the next 2 or 3 weeks, everybody's just thinking of protection and, you know, stabilizing and making things more consistent, which is great. But in terms of scaling a business and making it crisis proof, the systems and structure that we've been talking about are absolutely essential. You know, if there is ever a task that only one person can do, that's not good for scale.
No, absolutely. And
particularly if it's the business owner.
Yeah, particularly not if it's the business owner. I mean, you just don't want any bottlenecks at one person. And if ever there was a time to be putting this stuff in place, it's now.
Absolutely.
I kind of see it as a pandemic Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
You know, let's get ourselves together, let's get our fundamentals, let's make sure we've got a roof over our head and that we can connect and keep running, and then let's put structure on these processes. And once we've done that, we can work on our community. Does it work all the way to the top? Because once we create our community and we're talking and we're sharing our knowledge and our abilities, then we can go back to our purpose and do the work we were born to do. So
absolutely. And you know, we are, you know, we were talking about planning earlier and sort of 90-day goals and so on. At the minute, you know, we are planning week to week, you know, because we don't know what's coming, but planning week to week and then reviewing what you've achieved and celebrating little wins, however small. Really crucial right now. So important to celebrate. Well, it's important to celebrate wins at any time, but right now, really important.
Absolutely. That's a lovely note to round off on, actually, because the amount of ingenuity that must be coming out of businesses all over the world at the moment, people determined to stay going, determined to keep their staff, and you know, just bad internet connections, not remembering to bring everything home from the office that you should have done on the lockdown day, and you know, all those things. And just you don't want to cancel your meetings. Let's just find another way to do this. Let's not cancel the workshops. Let's find other ways to do it. And if we need to change our customer journey, which we obviously will, maybe we need to change the work that we do and the services that we provide as a result of this. But there's opportunity there.
Oh no, massively. You know, and I do think that everybody will get that eventually. I think it is the sort of coping with crisis process is like the grief process, really, isn't it? It's going to be different for everybody. But I think once everybody gets that this is a massive opportunity to rethink and rework the way you work. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Marianne.
Oh no, thank you for having me, Paul. It's been a really good chat. I've loved it.
Oh, I've really enjoyed it. Yes, absolutely. So how can people find you if they want to bring you into their business and find out how to possibly remotely?
Definitely remotely. Certainly for the foreseeable future. Well, the website's mariannepage.co.uk, and all of the sort of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook are all Marianne Page Limited. My mug is all over most things, so if you see me, you're in the right place. But or just email me at mariannepage.co.uk. I'll be happy to hear from anybody, to be honest, because you know, like the rest of us, the one thing I have in abundance at the moment is time. So awesome. Get in touch. It'd be great.
And I feel like this whole podcast has been me giving testimonial to Marianne's methods. But
thank you for that, Paul.
It's been a pleasure. But in case you missed it, I thoroughly recommend that you work with Marianne to really work out these systems and processes. And you know, even as a precursor to that, look at your routines, look at your processes, look at how you can build this rhythm into your business. Because once your business has a heartbeat, moving it around and changing what you do becomes much easier and much more powerful, and you can find opportunity too in these crazy times.
Absolutely
Fantastic.
And read the book while you've got your downtime. Simple, Logical, Repeatable.
Definitely read the book. It's awesome, and I know a lot of people have got massive value from it as well, so as well as me. So there's more than one fanboy of Marianne Page. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening and watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks for joining us on Purpose First. This episode was brought to you by Remote, creating custom software for good business. Go to remote.online to find out more. For more talks, videos and content from me, go to paulmcgilvery.com. Finally, don't forget to subscribe so you can get the next episodes of this podcast.